Okay, I'd like to start with a bit of a summary of what we spoke yesterday, because I know many people were not here, and probably would be useful for you to know some of the topics. The first one was we're talking about how the moon is drifting away the Earth. So every year, the moon is 3.8 centimeters more far from the Earth. The distance today is 385,000 kilometers. And the point is this: if this universe, if this solar system is more than 4.5 billion years, as the evolution says, the moon should be much further away than it is today. So the position today is telling us that this is a young solar system, okay? That was one of it. Then we talk about carbon-14. Probably many people think that carbon-14 is approved for millions of years. It is not. Carbon-14 is the best friend we creationists have, because carbon-14 shows that everything that has carbon-14 must be only 1,000 years, say 50,000 years, or say 6,000 years. Depends on corrections there. I don't want to talk about that now. The point is that anything that has carbon-14 is a young object. For instance, diamonds. Diamonds do have, all of them, carbon-14, so they are young, consistent with only thousands of years. The other thing that has carbon-14 are dinosaur bones. Not all bones of dinosaurs are fossilized. Some of them are just in the natural way, and those do have a carbon-14. So the dinosaurs are not millions of years. They're just some 1,000 years old, which is the flood, by the way. The other thing that we can find very interesting, that the oldest living organism in the world is a tree called the bristlecone pine that lives in California. And that bristlecone pine is consistent with 4,300 years, which is probably the first tree that grew at that time after the flood. There's none older than that to give us a date. The other thing, we talk about the magnetic field. Magnetic field is reducing its power. So every 100 years, we have 5% less of the magnetic field. So that means that it has to be young, probably in the order of 10,000 years. Cannot be older than that. The salt in the sea is accumulating every year, and the sea today is not that salty. Should have much more if we had that 3 billion years of age. And also the sediments at the bottom tell us the same thing, cannot be that old. So you see, we have a lot of things to talk about last night. Well, this afternoon, we're going to talk about the flood, the universal flood. All the reasons we have to believe that that flood was totally real. Okay? But you have to be here, because I'm not telling you again the story. And tomorrow, we're going to go through races. Why or what are races? Or what are not races? Because the Bible tells us that all humans are just one race. So how can we understand that? You will see it's very easy, but that's tomorrow. Okay. We have to get into today's. I need the projection of my. That's it, thank you. Why evolution is impossible. First of all, the Adventist Church is one of the only churches that have in its beliefs the number 6, which is creation. We have been recently created in 6 days. It's only 6,000 years ago. And this probably, it's the only one, the only church, because most of the other churches, most of the Christian churches are theistic evolutionists. They believe in God, but they believe in evolution as well. Most of them, okay? And in the General Conference session in 2015, it was decided not to be ambiguous about that, about ages. They said they include the word recent because we don't want to have any ideas of deep time, millions of years. So that's one of the good reasons. In the Pew Research is an independent organization in Washington, D.C., that study in the U.S. what happened with the churches, what the churches believe. And in this case, they query about the rejection of evolution or the acceptance of creation, either way. So what was the result? The one poll was done in 2014, said that in the majority of Nicaraguans, Dominican Republic reject evolution. Okay? But a solid majority support evolution in Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. So it's totally the opposite. In 2017, it's very recent, the late report has been published. Pew reported that majority of Muslims reject evolution in Afghanistan, Indonesia, and Iraq. But same report says that Seventh-day Adventists, 67% rejects evolution. 67%, the highest in all Christian churches. Because evangelical Christians, only 57 reject evolution. And Protestant, which are the main churches, the Anglicans and those, 30% of them reject evolution. And Roman Catholics, 29%, and Jews, only 16%. What point I want to make with this? Seventh-day Adventists, 67% rejection. But that leaves open 33% of the church which still believe in evolution or still accept part of the evolution. And that's a problem. And that's why we have to keep preaching, showing, teaching all this area of knowledge. Job 12, 7-9, tell us, but now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? And ask you, how could a beast, a bird, a fish, or the earth let us know that God made us? How can they tell us? Well, there's one answer. Because of the design. All birds, all animals have been fantastically designed by God. And you can learn from their organism how they've been built. And it's so complex, so full of answers that we know that cannot be other way but creation design. All right? There's a writer, he passed, Roger Morneau. I know many of you must know him. He wrote this book, A Trip into the Supernatural. Any one of you have read this one? No? I know one. You had. Yes, lift your hand. Okay. This book tells us about the experience he had when he was 20 years old. He was sailing in merchant marine ships, and then he disembarked and went into Vancouver in Canada. And over there, he mistakenly joined the Church of Satan. And over there, he learned a lot of things. But one of the things that I want to share with you that he tells in his book is that the big plan of Satan was to destroy the Bible without burning it. And the way to do it was through the principles of evolution. So evolution was created, was invented by Satan to get Jesus out of the picture. Has nothing to do with science. has nothing to do with reality. This is a religion of no God. Evolution is a religion to reject God and to have an excuse not to love Him. Today, unfortunately, has been very successful. All the TV shows, all the programs, even scientific programs, will tell us that everything on evolution is true. They will tell us that Darwinist theories explain fully the existence of living beings. They will tell us that the known evidence support Darwinism and that scientific world believe it is true. But let me tell you, this is far, far from the truth. It is not true. They just lie, if you want to put it that way. Just lies. Many thousand scientific people of the highest level reject evolution. They dissent from Darwinism. And they are in a list. There are many pages with all of them having doctorates, having degrees in biology, in every single field of technology. And they reject evolution. Why do they reject evolution? Because they think it's absolutely wrong. This is an interview with a molecular biologist. This was done by this journalist, George Kayla. And he was asking, do you believe that the information evolved? And he said, no, George, nobody I know in my profession believes it evolved. It was engineered by the genius beyond genius. And such information could not have been written by other way. The paper and ink did not write the book. Let me repeat that. The paper and the ink do not write books, do they? What do we need to write a book? An intelligent mind. An intelligent mind. And that is what's always missing in evolution, because evolution is not acceptable intelligence. It has to be only chance and time. Okay. So we continue. Okay, so do you say this publicly? He said, no, no way. Because, he says, to be a molecular biologist, you have to have two insanities at the same time. The first one, I would be insane to say that if I would believe in evolution, would be insane to believe it. Because we have the truth, and you can see it by yourself. Secondly, but the second insanity we have to have is to say to everyone else that we do not believe in evolution. Because if we do, we will not get work, government work, grants, and everything that we need to live as anyone else. So, but this look a little bit, he says, doesn't look honest. And he said, yeah, but that's the way we have to do it. You know, he says, my profession, we need to, we need this one here. So we need to live with an elephant in the room. You know what an elephant in the room is, do you? It's a say in English. So everyone knows that the elephant is here in the room. Big elephant. Make a lot of noises, eat a lot of hay. It's dirty, it's smelly, and you can't know this is here. But you have to pretend that it's not there. You have to ignore him. And that's exactly what all scientists have to do with design. They have to ignore it, pretend that it's not there. So evolution protects by itself very vigorously from other interpretations. So you have to belong to evolution to have work, to have money for research, to work and teach in universities in scientific areas, to have the best jobs, to win Nobel Prizes, even that, and to publish in the best magazines in the world like Nature or Science. And even time in the telescope you cannot get if you are a creationist. You cannot criticize the paradigm. There's a doctor called Raymond Demadian, and he was given in 1988 the National Medal of Technology by President Ronald Reagan. In 1989, the Maiden was included in the National Inventors Hall of Fame, together with Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Samuel Morse, and the Wright brothers. In 1989, the first MRI was built, the Indomitable, in exhibition at the Smithsonian Institute. And in 2004, he was awarded the Franklin Institute Medal for the development of the magnetic resonator, which transformed the diagnosis and treatment of diseases. This is Dr. Demadian with the MRI in the museum, the Smithsonian Museum of Washington.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Demadian.
Volume, please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Demadian. I am a young Earth creation scientist and believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour days, just as recorded in the book of Genesis. By God's grace and the devoted prayers of my godly mother-in-law, I invented the MRI scanner in 1969. The idea that scientists who believe the Earth is 6,000 years old cannot do real science is simply wrong.
Yeah, why I'm trying to show this? Because this man was denied the Nobel Prize. He built this MRI, and the MRI team got the Nobel Prize because of the importance it had. But he didn't get it. Only his assistants, the people that work in his team got it, not him. And why was that? Because they said, it is bad enough that such people exist, creationists, let alone given the added status and pedestal from which to preach, which is the Nobel Prize. You see? So they just opposed, and people just, many people can have opinions here and there, but he didn't get it. And if that was a criteria, they should have rejected Isaac Newton. All right? But I was telling you that the plan of Satan was to get rid of Christ. Look at this man. He's called Frank Sindler, an atheist, linguist, Bible scholar, and humanist. Maybe you can see some discrepancy here, atheist and Bible scholar, because this is an academic thing, so that's acceptable. So he says, the more devastating thing that biology did to Christianity was the discovery of biological evolution. Now that we know that Adam and Eve never were real people, the central myth of Christianism is destroyed. If there never was Adam and Eve, there never was an original sin. If there was never an original sin, there's no need of salvation. And if there is no need of salvation, there is no need of a Savior. And I submit that puts Jesus, historical or otherwise, into the ranks of the unemployed. I think that evolution is a death knell of Christianity. Okay, this statement, you can see clearly that Jesus is a problem. He was put aside as not needed, as unemployed, because evolution does exactly that. So you could say, all right, do we need to teach this in churches? Yes, absolutely. Two parents here are very happy saying, don't worry, our kids are very active in church. This stuff won't affect them. What stuff? What is in the air, in the schools, at universities? That dinosaurs are birds, that evolution is true, that amen existed, that there are millions of years everywhere, that Bible is a big scientist, and the Bible is not true, and there's no creator. And that will hook kids, people. That will hook them. And they will be thrown out of a church. Let me tell you that worldwide, the 66% of kids that when grow, they go out of the church. And mainly because of evolution. Because at university or schools, they are taught exactly the different, the opposite to what the Bible tells us. Now, what's the difference between creation and evolution? It's based in the acceptance of God. It's not science the problem. We accept or we don't accept God. That's the difference. It's not science. Science is absolutely out of this story. Because there is an urgent need to accept the supernatural. The supernatural do exist. God does miracles. God created all our world from nothing. Ex nihilo is the technical word. God created all us, human, with his own hands, from nothing, from mud. But we have to accept a lot of things are supernatural. For instance, the origin of life. No one in the world, in any ages, no one has ever been able to put life together. Life is a miracle. No one can do it. Not even with the best technology, they cannot do it. It's too complex. But we exist. So how did it come to be? The only answer, supernatural. God did it for us. Secondly, the organization and language in DNA. If you have studied genetics, genetics is absolutely complex. It's a written book of how we have to work inside. And that written book is not only software, which is a written book, but we need hardware inside to build all the proteins. And also we need a repair mechanism, but we will talk later. So, how did this all come to be? Only by supernatural. There's no other way. Chances cannot make a DNA to work. It's impossible. Thirdly, formation of the universe. The universe, with its vastness, is just and the order that it has cannot just happen by an explosion. That's a big lie. The magnificent order that we have, and mathematical order with mathematical properties we have in nature, physical laws, universal constants, opposite to randomness. This is how do we have all these laws, which is order. It's a mind putting order. That doesn't happen by chance. Chance is disorder, is chaos. This is exactly the opposite, what we can witness. Nanoelectric motors, at the end we will see some of them, are just fantastic, much better than man-made motors, electrical motors. How can they happen? And also postmen. Right now, you have working in your bodies millions of postmen delivering cargoes, delivering chemicals, proteins into your body. And that they're working. How do they work? Who created them? Who organized them? And lastly, intelligent design in living creatures, animals and plants, what is called irreducible complexity. All of this tell us that no way things are just by chance. We have to have a designer, an intelligent mind behind all this. When we ask this man is called Richard Dawkins, a very active supporter of evolution, and an atheist, of course. He says, I am attacking God, all gods, and anything, everything, and everything supernatural, wherever and whenever they have been or will be invented. Let's see the origin of life. In accordance with the evolution text, they say that the original life appeared in a primordial soup. And just happened by chance. They had the chemicals and they have all the products there necessary for life. A lighting came into it, gave energy, and life was produced. Do you think that is possible? Well, it's not. It's impossible. Life does not happen that way. There was an experiment called Miller-Urey. And this experiment was exactly imitating what I just said, that primordial soup. They put their no oxygen, water, ammonia, methane, and they make it circulate there for 10 years with energy in that area. After circulating for 10 years, do you think it produced life? No. Never produce life, because life is much more than chemicals and energy. So let's see what life is. Here we have a bacteria which is unicellular and is called the Escherichia coli, E. coli. And this bacteria is composed of proteins, 2.4 million of 4,000 types, DNA, 4.6 million pair bases, nucleic acid, 255,000 of 660 types, polysaccharides, 1.4, lipids, metabolic intermediates, water, minerals, and 800 simultaneous chemical reactions. That is just to live, to support life. A lot of chemistry, a lot of complexity, a lot of systems working together, which is just a symbol of life of a bacteria. Let's analyze just one. Proteins, that one there. If those proteins can come by itself together. Say we want to build a construction, a church. And for that we need bricks, we need gravel, we need sand, and also some other components which are more complex, like cement, aggregates, steel, timber, plastic, glass, door, windows, aluminum. But do we have a building if we have the bricks there, the gravel here, the sand there, the cement there, the windows there? Do we have a building already? What do we need? What do we need? A plan, a design, someone thinking, intelligence, all right? So we need this, information, design, drawings, Gantt chart to put timing together. With that, yes, we can build a building, but we need this. And this is not part of evolution. Evolution does not accept that. There's no intelligence in evolution. So let's construct some biological life. To build anything living, we need proteins. That's a basic, like the bricks of life. A protein, and it's at the same time, they're built by amino acids, 20 of them. Here are the 20 that have to build the proteins. But one protein requires at least 500 of these, the 20. And they have to be in the right sequence, which is the DNA that gives the sequence. And also they have to have peptide bonds, and they have to be left-handed, not right-handed, left-handed. Okay? And the possibility that this occurs, just one protein by chance, to be built by chance, is 1 divided by that big, big number to the power of 950. You know what's the chance to that to happen? The chance is 0. There's no chance that not one protein is built by chance. No, not one possibility. So if this is the basis for life, how life could be built, if not by a powerful God? This is the Mycoplasma genitalium, which is the smallest organism living in the world. And this needs 387 proteins. If one protein is impossible, what about 387? It's more impossible. So is the possibility to one simple living organism to live by itself is 0. Absolutely 0. Moreover, if we have a living cell, simple cell with 500,000 pair bases, and we want to convert that into a man, a human being, we need 3 billion pair bases. So from 500,000, we have to have 3 billion pair bases. Where do we get that? That's information, which formulates eyes, nerves, skin, bones, blood, liver, kidneys. All what we have is organized by these 3 billion pair bases. How do we get it? Only an intelligent mind can put it together. There's no other way. Chance will not do that, even if you give millions and millions of years. Chance, there's a book that says not a chance. It says, when we appeal to chance, that actually means that we are ignorant of the true causes at work. As they write, chances have no power to do anything, and the chances of chance doing anything are nil. Okay, having said all that, the books that your kids will be studying in biology or the university, the answer which is correct is this, that life came from a primordial soup, what is called abiogenesis, and then happens to grow in information by itself, converts into a multicellular being, then into a fish with all the information a fish has, then convert into an amphibian, and the amphibian converts the gills into lungs and converts the fins into legs, and then went out to the sea as a reptile to the beach, and then convert to a mammal, and the mammal converted into a monkey, a chimpanzee, and us. And today we're here. Can you believe that? I mean, that's a right answer for the evolutionists. And how could anyone believe in that? The only way to believe in that is because you want to deny God. When this man is asked, he answers, the origin of life is a complete mystery. Yes. So let's see a little bit of our DNA. DNA is in this cell, we have the nucleus, and inside the nucleus, the chromosomes, which are these eggs. And the chromosome is all wrap up the DNA with 4 letters, A, T, G, and C. Okay, 4 letters. Remember that computing sciences use only two letters. And what are those 2 letters? Zeros and ones. This has 4. So it's much more complex. Let's see this document.
Think of how many letters fit.
Volume.
Think of how many letters fit on a single page. And now imagine a stack of pages 300 feet tall. That's how much information is stored in the DNA inside every human cell, the entire human genome. If you sort through the 3 billion letters that make up the human genome, you find some surprising things. Only about 1% of the 3 billion letters directly codes for proteins. Of the rest, about 25% make up genes and their regulatory elements. The function of the remaining letters is still unclear.
You can see it's still unclear because science has not discovered everything. They thought that all this information was a result of evolution. That was, they called it the young DNA, was just useless. Today, they're ashamed of that because it's absolutely necessary for controlling all the system. So could a DNA be formed by chance? No way, it's 0 possibility. 1 divided by 10 to the 40th power of 40,000. Just impossible. There's a prominent atheist, he also passed, that converted. He was called Anthony Flew. He got a book on this, and it was the most influential atheist and philosopher in the 20th century. And he used to debate against creation. And in 2004, he declared his acceptance of God. He became a theist. But what he says that he converted because DNA material has shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life, that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinary, diverse elements to work together. In short, my discovery of divine has been a pilgrimage of reason and not faith. So we got into God knowledge by reason, by knowledge, not by faith, like probably most of us. Now, there's a lot of importance in repair because we are corrupting every day. Mutations happens all the time. We're going to talk that a little bit later. But corruptions happens all the time in our genes because of smoke, because of charcoal meat, because of chemicals, because of what we breathe, a lot of reasons. And radiation, of course, produce mutations in our body, millions of mutations, okay, that have to be corrected. Okay, in 2015, the Nobel Prize was given of chemistry was given to Thomas Lindell, Paul Mordrich, and Assis Sankar because they discover the process to repair, the mechanism to repair the DNA. And the surprise that they gave the credit to God. They believed that God was the only one that could put together all this fantastic mechanism to fix our DNA. Now, along this is a different topic. Remember, I told you before, I'm going to be putting topics just by itself, so you will not get confused. Human genome and chimps are the most closest, okay? And was said after the Human Genome Project in 2003 that we were 99% similar to chimps. Later was 95. Later was 81. Today, the latest says that it is between 70 to 85%. Depends how you measure it. Now, what's the idea if we are similar, 70 to 85% similar to in DNA to the chimps? We must read that we are half monkeys? We must read that or no? What do you think? No, of course not. Don't give me an answer. No, of course. But think, why we're similar? We both have heads, eyes, mouth, teeth, arms, hands. We have similar bodies. So there are a lot of similarities. Okay? But are we half monkeys? Well, let me tell you, banana and men share 72% of the genome. So we have to be half bananas as well. And why we're similar to bananas and to tomatoes and to lettuce and to meat and to everything we eat is because we have to be biochemically similar to be absorbed, to be food for us. So that is the reason why we're so similar. So it has nothing to do with a similar origin. Okay? Different topic. This is the cell again. And in the cell we have all our DNA in the nucleus there, all the chromosomes I showed you before. But here we have the mitochondria. And the mitochondria has also a different DNA. And that DNA in the mitochondria is very special. You know why? Because it comes from our mothers only. Mothers, women, are the only that can transmit the mitochondrial DNA. Why? Because mitochondrial DNA is transmitted through the eggs, the ovules of the women. Do we have ovules? Men have ovules? No, of course not. So the only way to transmit to the baby the information, the mitochondrial DNA, is with the ovules of moms. Okay? The point is this. This is the shape of it, the mitochondrial DNA, and are inside those mitochondrials. Okay, the point is this. In the study of evolution, they discover that all humankind had the same mitochondrial information. The DNA was exactly the same. So how that could be? If I get my mitochondrial DNA from my mother, my grandmother, and so on, you got your mitochondrial DNA from my mother, grandmother, and so on. There's one point that they must come in common. And that point in common was called the mitochondrial Eve. They recognized that we come only from one common woman. All humanity comes just from one woman. And that woman is called the mother of all humanity. But because they're evolutionists, They said that woman was living in Africa 200,000 years ago, and of course she was a monkey. That place in Africa made look like that. This is imagination, by the way. But the study went further. Another group of scientists discovered 10 years after that the mitochondrial DNA had much more mutations than thought before. And there was 20 times higher in mutations. So was consistent with 6,500 years only. And what is that? That's exactly when we get to our Eve, our biblical Eve. So everyone accepts that all we come from just from one common mother, which was Eve. And of course, because of this study, we believe was the biblical Eve. But there's more information. These are the 23 chromosomes which are in the nucleus. And we have the chromosome 23. This is a sex. This is the one that determines what sex we are in. Okay? So it's X, Y, or XX. There's no XZ, by the way, if you're going to ask me that. So X, Y, or XX. So this XY, what is Y? It's a male, right? A male. So we males only have chromosome Y. But chromosome Y, because among men, we don't reproduce ourselves, the chromosome Y never changes. So I got it exactly the same from my father. Chromosome Y exactly from my grandfather, great-grandfather, and so on. And the surprise is that all men in the earth have the same chromosome Y. What tells us that? It's telling us that all men come just from one man. And that man was called Adam, Y chromosome Y or Y chromosome. That man, of course, was another monkey that lived 200,000 years ago and all that story. But you see, genetics proves that we come from one man and one woman. And that is not told to students. But going a little bit further, there was a study, a very serious study, on chromosome Y of man and chimpanzee. Because if we are relatives, or we come from chimpanzees, or we're cousins, we must have the same chromosome Y. Okay, do you get me that? This is important, because if you don't understand this, you will not get the next one. If we have all humans, chromosome Y, all males have the same chromosome Y, and monkeys are our cousins, and we come from the same descent, they also have to have the same chromosome Y, correct? Yes. So that was evolution was trying to prove exactly that. And this professor is David Page. He said, Y chromosome is full of surprises. He was from the Whitehead Institute of Biomedical Research in Cambridge. He just found that the chromosome Y of chimpanzees and humans are horrendously different from each other. And he says horrendously different because he's an evolutionist. And the only thing he wanted to see was that we're similar. And he says that 30% of the chimp Y chromosome lacks of alignable parts to the human Y chromosome. So the relationship has been blown to pieces. Just for this, we can say very technically, we are not cousins or descendants from monkeys. We're not. We're created by God, and that's it. I was telling you about the entropy, about the decay we have in our bodies because of mutations. Okay, from those mutations, the repair mechanism will repair most of them. But in our lives, we will remain with many hundreds that will stay there. And that will be transferred to our descendants. and then to the next generation, and to the next, and to the next. So wrong mistakes will be transmitted to the future. Those mistakes, those errors in our DNA do have a price, which is called entropy, genetic entropy. So this is Dr. John Sanford, a genetist from Cornell University. And he says that genetic entropy is a powerful evidence that life and mankind must be young, because genomes are degenerating, and human genome cannot possibly have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, let alone millions of years. So genetic entropy is probably the fundamentally underlying mechanism explaining the extinctions process of many species. Probably many species just disappear of the earth because of entropy, because of deformation of the DNA. And the problem is that there are mutation accumulation. And he says that this is consistent with a miraculous beginning, a young earth. And he also said that they put together a genetic computing model program to anticipate how long we can live. And the result was surprising. He says that we can only survive 268 generations. I'm talking about humanity. 268 generations of humans can survive. The problem is this. A generation is about 30 years. So if we are talking about 268 generations, it's about 8,000 years. So we have to think that, okay, because of the entropy, humanity will not live any longer than 8,000 years. So how could we come from monkeys millions of years ago? How could we come from that woman 200,000 years ago? You see, things doesn't match up. So we have to think, oh, this guy has something there. And I'm not talking about the return of Jesus. This has nothing to do. This is genetics only. Okay, let's go a bit into Darwin. This is Darwin with his optical microscope. And today we have electronic microscopes that can magnify things up to 1 billion times. So anything a cell can look like a city, as big as a city. So he published in 1859 his book, The Origin of Species, and he wrote this: the natural selection could do nothing until favorable variations happened by chance. Favorable variations. That was well defined by other evolutionists that they call it mutations. So mutations are the responsible to give new life, to give new information, to give a new life to new beings. And let's see what mutations can do for us. So mutations plus natural selection is evolution. That's the principle. But this is mutation in animals. This is a albine crocodile. This is an albine gorilla. What happens with him, he doesn't have any melanin in his body. He cannot produce it because of mutation. So that's why he's white. Or a double-head serpent, six eyes frog, a no-feather chicken, and so on. In humans, what happened? Humans got Down syndrome, the albinism again, the progeria, or Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome. These are 10-year-old boys. Or cleft lips, or a hand with 6 fingers. And plus also cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, color blindness, midget giantism, and many others, thousands of more defects, just because of mutations. So what's the advantage of the mutations if that's a mechanism for evolution? Oh, double head boy, yes, as well. Mutations in human. There are known 50,000 known genetic mutations that are linked to diseases in humans, and 32,000 of these are single-point mutations. Half of those single-point mutations have been identified as a GC pair that has mutated into AT pair. And in Melbourne, we have the Museum of Natural History, and they tell us there that mutations are marvelous mistakes. And they say mutations and changes in DNA that can cause new variations, mistakes made when DNA is copied. So that's a lie, absolute lie. What we do have is adaptation in nature. That is, animals that change color, height, fur, and this is absolutely acceptable to creationism. But macroevolution never happens. That a new species form from another, that a cat transforms into a dog. Never, ever happened. So let's see an example of adaptation or speciation, which is not evolution. Again, this is just adaptation. These all are dogs. Saint Bernard, Arctic wolf, and fennec fox, a African wild dog, and wolf, a dingo, coyote, and the Canis familiaris, which are domestic dogs. All of them are dogs. All of them can reproduce among themselves. They do not, but in laboratory you can do it. A horse and a mule, can they reproduce themselves? Yes, of course. A mule, a donkey and a horse comes a mule. Or a horse and a zebra comes a horse. Or a donkey and a zebra comes a zonkey. And these are real examples. They're not tricks. They're real examples because they come from the same origin, but they adapted. And then you can join them together again. A lion and a leopard, she-leopard, they can get together and produce a leopard. Or a lion and a tigress produce a liger. Okay? Because they come from this same family of felines. Or a camel with a llama, they can produce a little baby called the kama. Okay, we are in a young earth. As I said before, the topic we reviewed yesterday. But I want to show you one thing that is very important, very important. What happens if you have a chicken ready to eat and you put it on the backyard of your home? How long it will last? Don't look at that. Look at me. How long it will last? 1 day, a week, a month, a year? Depends on what? No, I mean, the yard is just there, open to the air. It's not a fridge. How long it will last? It will last a week? Okay, what happens with that? Will rot, wouldn't it? Will rot and just will disappear. At the end, will disappear because that's the way nature have designed things, just to disappear, to decompose, and to make just the basic elements again. So that's the way it goes with all fossils. Fossils, we know that because they have been buried and very hard, they're compressed, with no air and with no scavengers, they can last up to 10,000 years. 10,000 years at the most. So a fossil of a dinosaur can last at the most 10,000 years because of this condition. So you can still find soft tissues there after 10,000 years. They don't decompose the same way as a chicken in your backyard, okay? But 10,000 years is 10,000 years, not a million years or more than that. This is Dr. Mary Schweitzer, and she was unearthing one T-Rex in a place like this. It's not the same, but it was unearthing at that time the femur, the big bone. And because the big bone was so big and so heavy, they couldn't transport it in a helicopter to the lab. So they had to cut it in half, like that, with a saw. And when it opened, there was a stingy smell, very foul smell. And they couldn't understand what happened, because this should be just rock, just minerals. But it was smelly. When they took it to the lab, they discovered that in the core, they had some blood vessels, some blood cells, they have collagen, they have proteins, hemoglobin, actin, tubulin, collagen, histones, and a lot. And this happened in a long time. There wasn't just one discovery, it was discovered in a progress. So this was a really a thing that nobody could believe.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what? You say,
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid...
Let's put this under the scope here.
Well, look.
Is that a blood vessel?
This is a blood vessel.
You're
You
kidding.
see the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. I mean, 80 million years old.
Mary published her new results last year, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the controversy still rages, and the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA?
Okay. Mary she's a Christian, but she's not a creationist, she's an evolutionist. So that's why she couldn't believe this. And when she learned that this was impossible to be wrong, because it repeated 17 times the testing, she said, all right, I'm going to tell my boss. But because she was reluctant to tell the boss what happened, because I'd be ridiculed. Did you hear that? I'd be ridiculed, because this is just impossible. Keep it for me. That was her intention. But she couldn't. Well, there was a reviewer that told me that he didn't care what data said. He knew that what I was finding wasn't possible. Says Schweizer. I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said, none. None. That's the attitude of an evolutionist. I don't care what you discover. It's none. I don't want it. So because of this, opens a big door. And a lot of people start looking for traces of biological tissues in dinosaurs and other organisms in the whole column, geological column. And you can see a list here of all the discovery that has happened after that. There are hundreds of them. And in the whole geological column, we have examples in every level. And this is supposed to be 550 million years old. But because they have tissues, it is consistent with how many years? I said it before. How many years? 10,000 years. So this is fully consistent. All the geological column is consistent with the flood, because the flood happens only 4,350 years ago. Okay? So before Christ, sorry, I said it wrongly. Okay, do we need for petrification or for fossilization millions of years? No. This is a bag of flour which fossilized in 1 year. This is a hat in 50 years. This is a fountain in 100 years. Or this is stalactite, 40 years only. These are in Queensland, a zinc lead mine, 55 years. And in this place, in Yorkshire and in UK, there's a dripping well with calcium. The locals put a lot of objects there, so they will fossilize. It's a tourist attraction. And they sell these little things, like a bear, that converts into rock in only 8 months. Do we need millions of years? No. Depends just on the conditions. Okay, this is the last topic, intelligent design. We have motors inside ourselves, our bodies. Motors which are almost exactly the same as electrical motors that you have in your hair dryer, in your elevator, if you live in a building, or whenever you need electrical motors, are about the same. A motor has a shaft, a rotor, a stator, a control, a cooling system. And this is obviously designed by electrical engineers. But in biology, we have a good example of a bacteria, again the E. coli, which swims with engines and propellers at the back. These are not hair, these are propellers. And the propellers are moved by motors like this. And those motors, this is an electronic microscope photo. They have also clutch, motor clutch, to connect or disconnect the propeller. And here goes how it works. Okay, you see we have the shaft, we have the rotor, we have the stator, we have the clutch there, we have a bearing, again the shaft, and the heat exchanger, and the propeller that goes that way. This is formed by 20 proteins which are coded in the DNA of the bacteria. Okay? And they work together perfectly well. They are 98% efficient. Any motor of your car may be efficient only 40%. That means can use 40% of the fuel, and the 60% just goes to the air as heat, as friction, as anything else. But this is 98% efficient. The question is, who built this? Who designed this? You see, that's the issue. Because this, I call it the best demonstration of God's hands creating. Because it's impossible that this cell, the bacteria, build it by itself. They don't build motors. Or man cannot get into this level of microscopy. So who did it? Only God is the answer. Okay, the next one is a kinesin molecule. It's a protein that has feet and hands and carry weights like proteins or chemicals through a road, big roads, inside our bodies. Okay, here inside the cell, this is the nucleus. These are all the microtubules, which are the roads. And all the little points there are different kinesin carrying these cargoes. They're postmen, as I called before. But the interesting thing is that there's too many highways or too many microtubules inside the cell. They have traffic signals so they can coordinate their move. So one will stop, let the other go, and they will coordinate themselves inside. Also, when they get to the end and they deliver the cargo, they bend like that so they will not spend more energy. And they will wait until one kind of bus take them all on board and take them back into the starting point. The point is, who coordinates this? Evolution? Is possible that evolution organize all this? It's absurd. That absolutely no. So the only way is a creator, a very imaginative creator that put all this together. So we asked this man again, okay, tell us, can you accept intelligent design with all this evidence? And he said, yes, he can accept intelligent design as an explanation of reoriginating of life if this means that aliens brought life to Earth, but could not accept any possibility that God could have had a role in the design. So you see, what's the problem here? The problem is God, not science, not evidence. The evidence is there and favors creation and not evolution. But let's finish with this verse, Revelation 14, 6 and 7. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, and worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and the springs of water. So the last message of the first angel, and the last part of it, is talking about reinforcing creation, the creator. Let's worship our creator. Today, the Sabbath day, that's exactly what we're doing, worshiping our creator. And on the 27th of October, this month, worldwide is celebrated the Creation Day for all churches in all the world to reinforce the idea that God is our creator. Amen? God bless you.